Hi, this is the NICU Lived Network, and we are your hosts. I'm Melinda.
I'm Nat.
And I'm Emma. We are all NICU mothers using our lived experience to partner with health professionals to impact research, advocacy, and clinical practice.
Each week we will bring you something new. It could be a topic highlight, the latest in research, a visit to a NICU, or ways in which you can use your lived experience within the NICU to impact change. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Well, hello everyone. We're live. Hi Nat. Hi Betsy. How are you both?
Hello.
This is fantastic. So on this week's episode, we do have a very special guest. April is HIE Awareness Month, and Betsy is the ED for Hope for HIE. So we're going to have a really great chat. It's fantastic to be with you all again. You have Nat and Mel with you. Em unfortunately couldn't join us today, but that's okay. We'll hold down the fort for her. And I think for me, like, we've been running these episodes for probably a couple of months now that we've started with the network, but this is the first time we've actually had another mum on. So we've talked to a lot of researchers and, about their work. But for us, and we were kind of talking about this, we started a little bit off camera, didn't we, Betsy? But talking about why we started the network. And I think for us as mums that have gone through that NICU experience, one of the things that we noticed being advocates or being part of research, design, and that kind of parent voice was that a lot of things happened behind closed doors. So the three of us were sitting in a conference last year, and we've been working together best part of a decade, and really said, everything that gets discussed, parents need to know about. Just like we're sitting here fascinated and we're, learning and we want to contribute, how do we open that door? So that's where the inspiration and the idea of the network came up, and really to be about research advocacy or helping to improve clinical practice. So, when you reached out to say that you want to share the work that HIE or Hope for HIE is doing, this is absolutely perfect. So I'm going to jump over to you and let you introduce yourself. And let's talk about the month.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so grateful for the experience and just connecting with you today. So Hope for HIE started like many other patient advocacy organizations do. A couple of parents found each other on the internet and came together and formed a Facebook group back in 2010. And these were families that were from Australia, the US, Canada, the UK, and just kind of, it's like the evolution of social media. They started on Yahoo, they came over to Facebook, and then, it's just like how the world has changed in connecting. And everyone had a very similar story. So HIE, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, is a very difficult experience for families to go through. Just a little bit of the background. It impacts 2 to 3 per thousand live births in high income countries and 10 to 20 in low and middle income countries. And there's a multitude of causes, basically anything that could or go wrong with birth before, during, or after, can cause a lack of oxygen, restricting blood flow and impacting the brain, which is how you break down HIE. And so, the experience really for these families, including my own, and I'll get to that in just a moment, really, was very isolating. The majority are full-term moms. And so, something goes terribly wrong either before birth or during birth, and babies need, significant resuscitation. And there is, where we were about 10 to 12 years ago is the only therapy that has been proven to decrease death and disability for HIE is therapeutic hypothermia, which sounds like science fiction when you listen to what it is. It's taking the baby and cooling them down to 91 degrees Fahrenheit and doing that for 3 days to try to mitigate brain injury to the baby's brain. And there's strict criteria for who qualifies currently. And there's what's called the SARNAT scale of HIE assessment. And they kind of rank where babies' presentation is on how sick they are at the time of birth. So mild, moderate, or severe. And that drives different treatment protocols. Neonatal seizures are very common. HIE is the top cause of neonatal seizures. So obviously it's a very significant neurological impact to the babies. And then, with cooling, like just like in other situations in the NICU, you can't, and although this is sort of changing a little bit, the standard of care was really to keep any touching to a minimum because you didn't want to, exacerbate pain or discomfort while the baby, or, adjust the temperature control while babies were in cooling. So separation, obviously, significant separation between mom and baby for days and until, because there's a cool down period, you're in cooling for 3 days and then there's warm up. And then typically on day 5 is MRI. So, kind of this sentinel experience that, is not known very well. It's not super prevalent in that it's, obviously prematurity is more common. And yet, 2 to 3 per thousand is actually not rare either. So it's just this, very unique situation. And so, Hope for HIE, that was the start was there was no education, about what this was. And everyone's kind of given a, well, this is how your baby is doing and what the MRI looks like, but it's a giant wait and see, wait and see how development's going to go. And if they're going to need more things, if there's going to be permanent disability, what level and impact that will be. So, in not having any answers, you need community, right? And I think that's where, where we've been able to really grow as a support organization first and foremost, and then building out the advocacy for it. So I came on the scene in 2012. My first son, Max, my first child. I only have one son, which is he. But he was born in 2012. He stopped moving when I was 37 weeks pregnant. I had excellent prenatal care. I did not anticipate anything going wrong, obviously. Either did my, medical team. And we just thought that we were going to be sent home. Like we'd pack up and be the people to get checked out and go. And that was just not the case. So, he was like a kick count save. They had taught me, at 36 weeks how to do kick counts. And he didn't have any counts or kicks to count. And so, when I went in, there was no heart rate variability. He was not doing, he failed like some of the checks on the ultrasound, and they said we need to get him out very quickly. So he was an emergency C-section. We were very fortunate to have high level access near us. And I had actually worked for the health system that I delivered into. So I was very comfortable with the team. Like I had worked developing like outreach and materials for like the NICU that we got transferred to. So I knew who was coming to get him when they said he needed to be transferred for higher level care. But we had no idea about what this cooling thing was, and they said, this is standard of care because it was in 2012. And so signing consent was pretty easy for it because we're like, whatever you need to do, like just do it. And I think about those parents when we talk about research in a little bit, who consented into those initial trials to say, oh yes, we'd like to cool your baby down for 3 days, and you can't touch him or feed him. And they have to be very sedated and still, so it's just like amazing to see like the evolution of the science with this as well. And so, I went through our NICU course. I was there for just under 3 weeks with Max. And, we went to get discharged and they said, well, do you have any questions? I said, yes. Boy, do I have questions, and I had asked, I said, are there support organizations that you can connect me to with this? That's, we felt very isolated. Like Max was the biggest baby in like the sickest pod of the NICU. And we were surrounded by people that had been there for months, and we're like, we've got this baby with a brain injury. And what do we do with this? No one actually named HIE to us until like later on after the NICU, which is another advocacy effort that we've undertaken over the past decade.
Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a few different reasons. So one, and especially, so I'm US based, the US has a really bad reputation for a good reason of being highly litigious. And so there are some cases that, unfortunately can be prevented. And so a lot of times it has just been taboo to, talk about, to in an effort to not, I think, promote, more litigation potential. And then I've also heard from people that they either thought that it was too like medical jargony for families to understand, or they, their HIE is under what they call neonatal encephalopathy. So it's like something is dysfunctioning with the brain. HIE is the biggest bucket of that. So, the question and the conversations that I've had over the past several years have been, okay, well, we don't know if it's HIE. It could be something else. I'm like, well, at what point do you know that it is? And the consensus is coming out. And the people that I've talked to have really said, well, around 5 to 7 days old, we can kind of rule out, certain things. I'm like, well, that's a great time to tell people, like, it's fine, like it's important to have an actual diagnosis so people can connect into support, because this is a longitudinal issue. This is not something that just is transient and goes away for a lot of, kids. And there is a high mortality rate. So, like, again, helping people understand. And then as you go on with life, if it was something that could be prevented in future pregnancies, or you need to know because you'd be high risk in future pregnancies, you need to have that information and be able to get great, consultation for planning for your family as well. So there's just a lot of things, those barriers that, I think and there wasn't anyone advocating for it either. There was no voice out there. So until, these families started Hope for HIE. So after, we got discharged and, I left feeling pretty frustrated that there were there was no educational materials, no support group to connect me to. And I had built a lot of marketing and patient education materials for the health system. So I was like, well, there needs to be this. Someone needs to make it. And then, so I went to the internet and found, 3 parents that were connecting, and all, led me to the Facebook group. And that was where I found the people that, would be traveling with me along the way of this experience. And just
how important do you think that is, like, to find other parents who have gone through the experience?
I mean, I feel obviously very strongly that it's essential because, like the trauma, the wild experience that it is, your friends don't understand, your family doesn't understand. Having people that are, further along in their journey, who can go back and ask these questions. I mean, you're going to these first assessments and you're especially for anything neurological, and you're I don't know what questions to ask this neurologist. What am I supposed to say? And so, that was the biggest help of hey, here's some things to look out for from that we've learned as, parents in this experience. Yeah. And that value is just immense. I mean, now we have 12 years of information share in a Facebook group, Yeah. And that's actually, been a lot of that we've been able to turn into advocacy of our unmet needs and kind of analyze those anecdotal conversations and trend out things that we know in our community longitudinally that some people have asked the question, on the clinician and research side. And then we're able to advocate and say, yes, we see this. Can we move forward this, this research, or look at this problem and how can we do it? So, over the past 10 years, I worked with some other families to develop the foundation side and start the nonprofit side. And we're kind of an inside out organization that we started globally and then needed to plant a flag somewhere to just organize. Yeah. And I happen to have a lot of really amazing friends locally who are very, very talented and
it's always grabbing who you can ask to help. Yeah. So what was the progression from it being a parent support group to then becoming a voice and moving into the advocacy space? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, a slow creep for a little while, for sure. So, I mean, in small, grassroots, grassroots goals. So the first 5 years, honestly, it was just we wanted to make the internet a safer place for families to find actual support, because the internet is the wild, it's wild out there. There's all sorts of complex medical journals. There's like misinformation. And it's like, okay, how can we just let people know that peer support is a great thing, and we have it over here at Hope for HIE, with the eventual goals of how can we, build that advocacy side. So for us, we were able to accelerate connecting families. And in that first 5 years, we went from 300 families to 4,500 families. So it was a pretty big growth curve.
Yeah.
And
probably an example of how, desperate the need was.
Yes. I mean, and just hearing like the theme, the stories over and over and over, of just the same lived, we were very alone. We had no support. We, like it just constant of articulating that need. And it's just heartbreaking, to hear, like to know, to have lived that and then to continue to see it, it's just very, it's difficult and it's gotten a lot better, thankfully, but it still has a long way to go. But, that was the first 5 years. And then in 2019, one of our families connected us to an organization called Trend Community, which was started by two moms of kids in the Prader-Willi syndrome community that were in a Facebook group, both had data backgrounds and saw all of these conversations happening and thought there's got to be more to this, to have this be meaningful, to bring to advocacy projects. And so they worked with us to create a community voice report. So they took de-identified data, all of that, in these anecdotal conversations, and were able through an AI and an algorithm to kind of develop this report about our community, about what matter, what people were talking about most of these unmet needs, and a community profile of demographics and things like that. And then we started getting emails returned and calls returned and things like that when we had this to say, this is our community and we want to partner because we know things that could be insightful, because these cohorts of studies had traditionally been so small. It's like a couple hundred kids, but you could analyze, with HIE, it's such a wide variety of outcomes. You can analyze 50 different cohorts of 50 kids and have 50 different answers sometimes.
So when you say calls and emails, that's from researchers? Yeah, from health professionals now to connect with you for your voice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So in that, in 2019, that's when everything changed. So we got, invited to join the Newborn Brain Society, which was a new society focused on, a medical society focused on newborn brain and neonatal neurology. So there's a lot of interest for HIE. We got invited to participate in the Neonatal Seizure Registry project, which is a US-based multi-center study looking at neonatal seizures, which HIE is the top cause of. And then, the ball started rolling. And over the past couple of years, I was able to move to be the executive director at the end of 2020. As we've, accelerated our funding and things like that. But now we're seeing I would say it's a research renaissance, especially for HIE, of what's next, and seeing the value of partnering with patient advocacy. So now we've been able to connect with different researchers and have, actively 4 different projects that we're collaborating on from the beginning with study design and things like that. And then there's more in the works as well. So, and globally. So it's really exciting to see, because we have a global community that we can tap into to, facilitate some of this.
Absolutely. And what is the landscape like? Because I know here in Australia, it's becoming almost policy that when researchers, put their grants in for funding, that they actually show that they've had parent or consumer or so many different words, but actual patient involvement. And it's almost where it won't even get through if they haven't done that stage. Is it like that in the US?
So it's changing for sure in the US. So, and I would say, Europe, definitely, it's like a mandate. And then I know Australia is, I don't know if it's mandated, but it's definitely heavily, heavily encouraged.
It's going to be hard to get funding if you don't do it. Yeah.
And so the US, I think, is in transition to that. I just spoke at an FDA event for, the regulatory body that, approves clinical trials and medications and, advancement of that. And I was very pleased to hear, a lot of the guidance that's coming out of the FDA of saying, like if there is a patient advocacy group or collective, you need to be tapping into it, and it can't just be a checkbox, like checking off a box that you're doing it. And I think that, we know that that's the way forward. We know that that is how the apps get, closed, is collaborating with the people that are living the experience.
Absolutely.
And often from the beginning,
yes.
In that part, that co-design part. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it only makes sense. Like, we're talking neonatal, and for anyone that's going into a NICU situation, trying to consent someone in like the midst of this very traumatic, no matter why you're in the NICU, is like, we have the insight of how to help, parents walk through that in a way that is going to help them understand a lot more,
Definitely. Yeah, we have some trials over here in Australia, if they're comparative trials. So, it's just looking at two different treatments that the baby is going to get one of them, and looking at ways to do waiver of consent for those kind of trials. And a lot of the messaging coming from parents is that, yes, like if it's a treatment my baby's already going to get and it's part of standard care now and you're just looking for an answer, stop burdening us. Like it's too much of a burden for us to be trying to make these decisions. And they consent for waiver of consent, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. I don't think we have that here yet, but I would say that
it's small steps.
Yes, there are definitely steps where, I mean, we have like 19 pages of a consent form, and now they're able to build something that is approved by the, review board to have like an overview of the 19 pages, so that way it is
to respect parents and where they're at and what they're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sorry, go ahead, Nat.
Oh, no, I was just thinking at a point you mentioned before about the projects, which is wonderful to hear that you've been advocating and now working with health professionals on several projects in train, and there's more to come. What are the kind of, and I don't know if you can, what are the kind of priority areas that you and families are working on to advocate for change?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different things. So for one, obviously, therapeutic advancement for HIE is really necessary. We have one that is in it, and it doesn't work for everyone. So we're consulting on one that's going to try into clinical trials in the US and multi-center this year. And then we're also we're a part of another one that's in the US that's a multi-center that's looking at mild HIE and cooling, which has not been, there's just a lot of discussion around that. And from our family's perspectives, if you don't meet the criteria, like you're always wondering if that would impact your, have been beneficial for your baby. So I'm really excited that that's moving forward. And then we are looking at, we're also partnering in Australia. So we've engaged what I love about this is because we have these location groups, we're able to tap in, and we've been working with a researcher who has asked, can you source families from each of the states and territories? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it, So then we have local families that are able to participate in giving that advice and in the process as well. So it's not, that's something I think the vision has always been of HOPE. Has been to have these mobilized groups to make sure that it's going to benefit everyone if we're able to have what we can do, and each system is so different. So having people that understand it obviously is critically important and have been a part of it, because it is going to look a little bit different depending on where you are.
It's wonderful. I mean, just listen to you talk. It truly is a global community, and it's just the fact that you can tap into the different groups, around the world. It's amazing. It's just it's really wonderful, and I kind of get really excited about being able to kind of bring families into different research projects everywhere. It's just, I mean, this is what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, for us too, it's been, a lot of the gaps, because we do connect families from, over 60 countries.
Wow.
And, from the support side, like there's, they don't get anything like we do in some of the higher resource countries, but we're able to, like, we onboarded a social worker and a child life specialist and, these professionals to help support families, and they can tap into that. So it might not be, anything that they have available in their home country or home, where they are in the world, but they are able, if they can connect in on, if they have internet connection, they can get into this support for sure. So, and we want to make that more equitable. That's a huge focus area to make sure that where we can close gaps, let's close them, to make sure families do have that access to support.
Well, if there's any links or, projects that you want to share with families, we'll definitely add it to when we post this up everywhere, and have that available that parents can, learn more and jump in if they can.
Definitely. We just are building out more on our website. So we have like a research tab on our, under our main website. And we're listing out, the active projects, other projects that we're involved in. And then, as things go, as you said, a lot does happen behind the scenes. So there's some of that as well of like, knowing to go to like our group of Australian families or whoever and say, we have this is the opportunity, this is how to be involved. And then when we can share, obviously more widely, we do for sure. But
and is it both sides? So whether, to enter a study as a participant, family with their baby, as well as being like an advocate and helping in the design of trials and things like that. You have like both sides.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
There's not as much on the post-birth side for HIE, but when we have those opportunities, those are the ones that, I mean, like people ask, and it's affiliated diagnoses, so epilepsy, cerebral palsy, any of those, like making sure people understand that they have, access to that.
Yeah.
And so, Betsy, you mentioned before, and Melinda as well, that it's HIE Awareness Month. Can you tell me a little bit, what's the theme for this Awareness Month, and also how can people get involved if they want to be?
Absolutely. So the theme this year is Connected by Hope. And so, just really elevating the many ways that our community is connected, and connected, not just families, but clinicians, researchers, greater community, extended family, and really, people can get involved in many different ways. We have a huge calendar of events of different online and in-person events that people can participate in. And it's all at HIEawarenessmonth.com. And we encourage everyone, again, why we need an awareness month is because it's an served population. And so, we've made a lot of strides.
Did Hope for HIE start the awareness month?
Yeah. So in 2016, we were like, well, there isn't one, so we're just going to do it.
That's amazing. Okay.
Is there a reason why April?
Not really. No, I think so. March is CP Awareness Month. Like there's all these awareness months for everything.
I know, there's so many.
How do we schedule it in, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, maybe we'll, follow that and go for April. So that's why it was picked.
So how many years has the awareness month been happening?
So it started in 2016. So I think this is our 8th.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really a testament to exactly the power of parents, and what happens, like what's possible when you use that lived experience to make change. Like it's just, everything that we're about, which is incredible.
Well, it's always wonderful to be with like-minded people who are, to see that, move forward for sure. And the work you guys are doing, it's just amazing. This platform that you're creating and really encouraging people to get involved in the advocacy is so critically important. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think you guys are setting a wonderful example of what's possible. And I just want to say, in terms of the HIE Awareness Month, I was looking at your toolkit this morning, and it's incredible. It's amazing what you guys have got in terms of all your events and information, and just ways in which people can get support you guys. Like, I was just like, this is incredible.
How big is your team, and where do you get your funding from?
So we are small but mighty. But we've been able, so I mean, honestly, like, it was
incredible. It is. It's really great.
We have a very, very passionate community, and very engaged. So our board of directors, our medical advisory board, and then we have a small staff. So like I mentioned, at the end of 2020 started, and then last year we brought on a part-time social worker, and then last fall we brought on a part-time program manager. So, because there's a lot of work to be done. And then we brought on Child Life this year, and then we do have a virtual assistant as well who helps with a lot of the admin work. So, and an intern who's helping with all of the graphics this month.
But we know non-for-profits, you wear many, many hats.
Yes. We squeeze out every penny that we get when you talk about funding. So it's a mixed model. We try to build in sustainability. Some of these partnerships, and they should, by the way, these research partnerships should come with funding for the patient advocates, because that is very important. We can't do this work on hopes and dreams. We wish we could. But it does
and
take...
it needs to go beyond reimbursements. Like in Australia, they would look at, say, childcare or travel costs and things like that. And we had our Perinatal Society of Australia and New Zealand, our annual congress recently. And it was actually one of the researchers from New Zealand who said, we have to get beyond that. Like, we cannot expect them to sit right beside us at the table and not pay them, and actually pay them properly. So, yeah, there's definitely a shift and a movement, and I think it's because we don't, as parents, we're not letting up. We're here, we're welcomed. They want our input, but you have to be serious about it and really have avenues where you can support parents to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we do typical charitable fundraising and things like that as well. But yeah, definitely. I think when you look at it, I think parents, when I mentioned earlier about the pushback on thinking that medical jargon or a medical diagnosis that's so, hard to say even is overwhelming, and parents can't handle it. They can, we have families from all sorts of backgrounds, and we are not just experts in our experience as parents, but we are experts in many things. We have people that have backgrounds as one of our board members is a pediatric neurologist, who's a mom. I have a background in healthcare communication, so there's just a lot of it's not just
resources. Yeah. So if people wanted to donate, they could do that as well. Jump on the websites that we've got at the bottom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I think I just want to again thank you for the opportunity, the highlighting of HIE Awareness Month. It's always amazing to have other groups, share about it, because inevitably more families get connected into the support that they didn't know existed before. We're trying hard with outreach always to get our education materials and, support materials into the NICUs, and have made a significant amount of headway. So, but we continue to have families, find us outside of those experiences, and, just try to be there in whatever way is needed.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing about hope for HIE, and also sharing the Awareness Month with us. We'll definitely be, sharing this on all of our platforms, and any information that you want and links that you want us to add, we'll absolutely do that. And even outside of the month, stay connected, and we'll continue to share information, which is great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
That's a wrap on another episode of the NICU Live Network. Thanks for joining us today. To stay connected, please make sure you're following us on social media and have joined our Facebook. Facebook group.
And if you found value in this episode, please share, like, or comment.
We'll see you on the next episode.